Hello Brawlers, Mike the Warrior here, and we're back with another 5 Facts video. This time we're covering Baron from Bakugan Battle Brawlers New Vestroia. Without further ado, let's get started. Baron is a Vestal, and when they came and invaded New Vestroia, they captured all of the Bakugan. Eventually, sometime later, a small resistance of 3 people stood up to try to get the Bakugan their freedom back. Baron is considered the rookie of the resistance, as he is the least experienced by the time the show starts, and at least in the beginning it was implied he was kind of a tech whiz. His place in the resistance is fairly unique, as he is a huge fan of the original Battle Brawlers. So much so that a theory could be made that they probably named themselves after them, because the Resistance full name was, and I quote, the Bakugan Battle Brawlers Resistance. I will just refer to them as the Resistance because that's just too long of a name. Anyway, at one point Baron came across Blade Tigrera, one of the Bakugan that saved the original Vestroia, and the two became partners for a really short time, that is, until he ran into Spectra. This is the first battle that we see in New Vestroia, though not in its entirety, as it's used to hype up the new villain, and poor Baron just had to be the one to lose, because, well, he had what he needed. And it was also a good excuse to show us that because the difference was 500 or higher, he ended up losing Tigrera, along with the battle. This moment traumatized Baron, and while he did do a good job for a time, he eventually came across his hero Dan Kuso, the strongest battler on Earth, and after he bothered him for quite a bit, Dan eventually agreed to make Baron his official student. But after a quick first, I guess we can call this a training session, Baron then confesses to Dan that he can't actually go through with being a student, and he admits that he is the one who lost Tigrera. And it's implied that he's planning on actually quitting. Funnily enough, Reno did the same thing. However, after a bit of pushing from his friend Mira and his partner Nemesis, Baron was able to move past this and regain his confidence and became one of the more powerful brawlers of the season. But more on this later. Baron is 12 years old, believe it or not. He's 1 year younger than Marucho. He never comes back for the following seasons, so yeah, this is as old as he's gonna get, as he's never mentioned again either. Baron's voice actor is Cameron Kenneth. Normally, I would list some other characters they played in Bakugan or Total Drama, but well, this was the only role he had in the series, and he was never in Total Drama, as a lot of voice actors from Bakugan also just ended up in that series. He plays this guy in Beyblade, but I have no idea who he is. As stated previously, Baron is the rookie on the team, and well, technically, unlike the first season, we don't have an official ranking on who is the most powerful and so on and so on. Well, in the context of the show itself, you could probably find one, but the credibility of the ranking is probably put into question. However, on 2 separate occasions, the Vexos have mentioned that Baron is probably the weakest battler amongst the Battle Brawlers. Well, because he's a noob compared to everyone else. And, you know, if the shoe fits, he has to be the weakest, right? I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys, I find this complete bullshit. Baron is far from the weakest battler. In the context of New Vestroia itself, he's far from the weakest battler. The first time Baron was mentioned as probably the weakest was by Link, who is actually probably the weakest character in the show. He never got a win by himself. His first actual win was because of Mylene, who carried them, and then his second big win was because the Vexos rigged the shield, or the field, so they really couldn't do anything. And in that very same episode, after he calls Baron the weakest battler, he then gets bodied by Baron, and he destroys his new toy. Like, I'm fairly certain that's where Altair gets destroyed, because he doesn't battle after that until, you know, part 2, or the second arc, you get what I mean. And after Baron gets his confidence in his first, like, you know, proper debut episode, he starts showing up some of the other battlers. Like, when Dan and Baron had to fight Mylene and Shadow after they got back to New Vestroia, Dan was shown up by Baron consistently. And yes, Baron got knocked out, but that's not like he got knocked out of the match because, oh, he lost the match, his life gauge hit 0. he was just knocked out because the shockwave knocked him back. But that only happened because he was protecting Dan, who couldn't have survived that attack because Shadow would have taken Drago if that attack connected. So Baron stepped up, and well, that was a moment where they could have lost there. And then later in the Attribute Energy arc, he teams up with Volt against Shun, and Shun is so freaking strong, so it says a lot that he was losing pretty badly against Volt, and Baron carried him. And if we just go back for a second and analyze the losses, his first loss in the entire show is against Spectra. Spectra, like, come on, he needs no introduction. You can't really blame him for that. They had to hype up the new big villain of the entire season. Like, he's, you know, the rival character that's replacing Masquerade. And after his, you know, proper focus episode, Baron's on a, like, win streak until the very beginning of the Attribute Energy arc, where he loses to Hydron and loses the Attribute Energy, where, again, he has to hype up a new villain, because Hydron was, well, he was a wimp beforehand. So this is done to show that Hydron and the Vexos are still a threat. And Hydron, like Spectra, are consistently shown to know what they're doing when it comes to battling. No, Hydron doesn't win all the time, and Spectra doesn't win all the time, but we know their skills. Like, we know they're not just jobbers. And then he loses the, I think this happens first, but he also ends up losing to the Avatar clone of himself, because that was done to help hype up the following season. And then the other loss that happened, I think, yeah, this is his final loss. If I have these two mixed up, I have them mixed up, but was when they tried to, you know, get rid of the, I think it was the BT system, and the Vexos rigged the field so they literally couldn't do anything. It was impossible for them to win. Spectra and Dan teamed up. They had the out, and they still lost. Like, there was nothing they could do. So in conclusion, yeah, I think they try to rag on Baron a little too much at times, and no one really gives him his flowers, because he is actually really insane when he locks in. Baron did eventually meet Runo, and even though they spent quite a bit of time together, it was never brought up that he was the one who fought Spectra and lost Tigrera. Granted, at this point in the story, Baron was over it by the time his introduction episode was over and done with. Though I will be honest, and at this point I'm just talking about my opinion, I do think this was kind of a missed opportunity. I'm not saying Baron needed to have this really big character arc with Runo hating him, because, well, he essentially lost her best friend. But this whole little portion where Baron goes to Earth with Dan does feel like he's being a little underused. Later in the arc, Dan loses Drago to Spectra, and everyone is just thinking about what to do next because he has Drago. How do they get him back? And Baron is the one to stand up and claim that he'll fight Spectra to get Drago back himself. However, Mira and the others shut him down, claiming that he can't win. Now, yes, he's moved past his loss with Spectra, and I'm not saying Baron has what it takes to beat the guy, but it is a shame that they didn't even let him try. To the show's benefit, we did get an amazing battle because they didn't go this route. I actually think this might be the best battle Dan and Spectra had from a story perspective, but I am a little sad at times thinking back on it. Maybe I just wish we could have had our cake and eat it too. Baron didn't even need to beat Spectra when he was going all out, maybe just from the perspective that he was able to get Drago back. And who knows, maybe it isn't impossible to win, because he does have one of the more overpowered abilities in the show. Like, if there's a top 5 list of most broken ability cards, this is definitely in that top 5 for me. And with that, we're done. I'm really sorry about that little rant I had in the beginning. If you guys couldn't tell, Baron's definitely one of my favorite characters in the series. He's definitely my favorite character of this season, so I am a little biased. But it should be noted that, again, pretty much all of Baron's losses, well, except for one, was in the purpose of trying to advance the story. But enough about my rambling. I want to know what you guys think. Do you like Baron? Do you hate him? I'm aware his personality, especially in the beginning, is a bit much for people, but for me, I think it has a bit of a charm to it. Let me know in the comments down below. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.